What's up guys, it's Trigon on the track once more, coming back with another video talking about a different topic today. So today what I wanted to talk about is how to get your beats to sound more dynamic, how to sound more full, how to make them just sound like a more professional, not necessarily mix. I'm not going to go into mixing all too much, but I want to share a couple little, not even secrets, but a couple little things I feel like are overlooked and underrated in the producer community that help a lot to bring out the best in your beats, okay? Alright, so as you can see right here, I have my recent free beat. It's called Thunder, and I just released this the other day, and essentially a couple people have noticed my use of transitions in that beat. I've been playing around with transitions ever since I started producing because I feel like it's a little detail that makes a lot in a beat. First of all, let's just give the beat a quick listen. Let's just see what it sounds like, and then I'll go into further detail and explain to you what exactly it is that I mean by transitions and details and stuff like that, alright? Just go into a little bit more detail into what's happening other than the melodic and rhythmic parts of this beat. Obviously right here in the beginning I have a little I have the drum part coming in, and other than that I just have a whole lot of instruments, right? However, if I just started just with these instruments and the drums coming in at the same time without any kind of decoration, without any sort of depth, it sounds pretty empty, I guess. Alright, so far so good. That in itself didn't sound bad, right? The drums come in, they're fairly dynamic. In the first part, when the drums first come in, I make sure that they're very held back, that it's a very simple drum pattern, and that in of itself is already a good kind of first little point to make here, right? I see many beats, or I hear many beats, where as the drums come in for the first part, kind of like still in between intro and first verse, or already part of the first verse, I hear it oftentimes that they just drop in 100% immediately, right? And that can make a very interesting effect, but most of the times I personally just sort of take that as it's a very sudden drop into the beat. Generally speaking, in most of my beats, I prefer just like kind of rolling in a little smoother, giving the listener a little bit more of a path to roll into the beat instead of just getting hit in the face immediately with a full blown like drum pattern and 808s and all that stuff, right? One thing that you'll probably notice throughout most of my beats is that it's a very similar arrangement in the beginning, right? It starts with just one simple instrument playing some sort of a loop melody, then very simple drums come in, and then with the 808s, some a little more advanced drums come in, probably another instrument or two. First of all, I would say don't drop in 100% as soon as you want the verse to start. If your track starts at like 100%, where is it going to go for the hook? Where is it going to go for the further development of the verses? So that would definitely be number one. The second thing that I personally value extremely highly is the use of transitions and the use of ambience and perks and all that stuff, right? I feel like these last like 5% worth in transitions, and again, simple transitions, little crash, little details, right? It's like this whole 80-20 rule, right? Put 80% of work into the 20% that do the most. So I down here have a whole group. All this red colored stuff right here is all just effects and transitions. Just listen, this is the same part where the drums come in up here, right? So let's just take a quick listen to only the effects of this. So what I've done here right at the top is just this part right here. It's just a reversed low piano note So I think you can hear what I'm saying, that you hear this piano note sweeping in, and there's the drop. That's when the beat comes in, right? Paired with this piano note, I also down here have the same note but pitched up a whole octave. Makes kind of a difference, right? Just gives it a little more depth. Alright, so this one's a really cool one. So this one essentially is sort of a, it sort of rises, it sort of sweeps in, but then it has this hard hitting, what is it supposed to be? It's supposed to be a door kicked open. So you can get really creative with what sort of works, right? Some long time ago, I downloaded for video production back in the day, actually. I downloaded like a whole sound effects sort of kit sort of thing. I guess nowadays I'd call it a sample library for like video production, you know, human noises, gunshots, door kicks, all that sort of stuff. Unfortunately, I have no clue where I got that. Whatever. Again, this probably goes back about 6 or 7 years. This just been chilling in my sound library since then. And I've just been using random Foley and random effects samples out of that kit inside of my beats, just as, again, transitions, as risers and all that stuff, right? So here I have this door getting kicked in, which just adds a lot of like oomph and a lot of, it's kind of a drop sound, right? I'm pretty sure you guys know what I'm talking about here. And then just beneath that, I have a little swoosh. Now I love swooshes. Again, back in the day when I used to do a lot more video production and animation and just all that sort of stuff, right? Every time I had any sort of text involved, any sort of title coming up, whatever, it had to have a swoosh. It wasn't finished until it didn't have a swoosh. So I have a long-lasting and deep obsession with swoosh and whoosh noises. Honestly, man, like, these swooshes make such a good job transitioning, because it's not a sound that you pick up as like a cymbal transition or something, which I also use a lot, but it's not. The swoosh is just like, it's this kind of wind blowing by, right? And that just is such a nice sort of entry into a drop section, or into the section when all the instruments start coming in, either for a verse or hook or anything like that, right? Every time that there's like a part switch from like a hook to a bridge, something like that, right? It has to have a swoosh. It's just giving so much depth and so much detail to it, right? Same thing as with a beat, where you don't want to start with 100%. You don't want to start with 100% of all different effects on the same drop either, right? Because if you're dropping into a very simple drum pattern, if you're dropping into a couple instruments, not even an 808 involved or anything like that, the transitions and the effects promised you more than the part that it's transitioning into actually provides, right? So that's just not really optimal either. Now, I said earlier I'm a big fan of cymbal transitions, and I found this particular one on Splice the other day, and I love it. It's a Kashmir KSHMR cymbal transition. I probably butchered the fuck out of that, but who cares? Just listen to this one. Right? It's very subtle. It's just about sort of like white noise, just kind of swooping in and out again. But again, it's not an aggressive sounding crash, right? It's just sort of swooping in, swooping out again. And that's what's giving it a lot of texture here as well. So if we listen to all of this stuff combined right here, where the 808s drop in. So as you heard, the transitions transition nicely into the 808. So yeah, and then like here again in the middle, every now and then I'll bring in like a little swoosh just by itself as a like a small transition. Alright, so in this case actually there wasn't even an extra instrument coming in. It was purely just the swoosh that sort of, you know, brought a little bit more movement into the beat. And yeah, other than that, for like the whole effects sort of thing, honestly just play around with it. I wouldn't say that the more you add the better it is, because there's definitely a cap to everything. And if it's just too overloaded with a bunch of effects and all that stuff, it's not gonna sound soothing either. But if you manage to make sort of an atmosphere and to kind of like transition and take the listener by his hand and just kind of walk him throughout the beat, then that's definitely doing a lot already, right? The listener is not feeling like, oh, all of a sudden there's a whole bunch of shit coming in, but like, where did that come? Like, you know what I'm saying? It's not, they're not getting surprised by, oh, that's a sudden beat change all of a sudden, right? Or a part change or something, but they're getting transitioned into it, and that's what's making it sound so much more natural. Again, use these sort of a door kick sounds, whatever. This is something that nobody would really tell you to say, oh, hey, you know, just transition in with a guy kicking in a door or something. But once you start playing around with these sort of sounds, you'd be surprised at what sort of a impact that can make on the final beat, right? Okay, let's get to the third point for this particular beat right now. This has been something that I've been playing around with ever since I started producing. I know my first ever beat that I produced back in like fall of 2019 or something. I started it off with what was it? I think it was just Rainfall. I think I literally just had Rainfall. It sounded in the mix in the end. It sounded like it didn't sound horrible, but it sounded like white noise essentially, just right. I love playing around with these sort of nature ambient sounds because it's something that sounds familiar. You as the listener, you as the consumer of this music, like you hear that and you're familiar with that sound. You know that sound already. So in this case right here, you guessed it, the beat's called Thunder. So for the second verse, I wanted to dynamically like turn it down a lot. So really, for the whole second verse, for the first part right here, all that's playing is the drums and then the super simple just piano. Right, that's like melodically all that's playing. It's just this piano and it's just the drums. So when I did this, I was like, okay, I like the idea with the piano. I definitely wanted to keep that, but it still was sounding pretty boring, just about, right? So what I did is just again looked up Splice. I love Splice exactly for this sort of stuff because I can just type in, okay, I need a thunder ambience or something, and then I can pick between 5,000 different recordings of thunderstorms. So just added in this quick like thunderstorm thing. It might be hard to hear because it's very subtle in the background. But you feel me? You get that kind of rumbling, that kind of like thundery sort of thing, right? And that again just gives this part a lot more life, I guess. Before it was just a piano with a pretty simple drum pattern. So with this like thunder ambient sort of thing, that gives it again a lot more life. So what I did here as well is down here, you'll see that I have like a, what is it called, a thunderclap. So it's essentially just a thunder impact as again a transition out of the thundering into the clean beat, I guess, where everything else is in again, right? So this again, it's very subtle, it's very much in the background, it's not loud at all, it's not supposed to be an in-your-face type of thing, but it does a lot to transition out of the thunder. It makes sense, right? You hear this passive thundering in the background, all of a sudden there's the big thunder, and with the big thunder as an impact, the 808s drop in, which sort of replace this need of this low, like rumbly sound. You can get very creative with that, and it just fills a certain frequency spectrum, and it makes the person recognize these sounds from real life, essentially, right? And that just, I don't know, I feel like that just gives the person another thing to kind of grip onto that's familiar, especially if you make it fit to the theme of the song, which in this case it's the thunder beat. I have thunder stuff in there. I started making this because it was thundering like fucking hell out here. It was a really rough storm, and that's when I sat down and did this. That's kind of sort of where the inspiration came from. That's why I did it this way. It's kind of like salt, right? Like, don't overuse it because it'll ruin the food, but if you have just enough, it's perfect. I'm a big salt guy. It just sort of rounds the corners and makes it sound more like a finished project rather than a work in progress type of thing, right? Yeah, so honestly, I think that's really all about all that I wanted to touch base on today. I hope that you yeah, found some kind of inspiration in this video, that I helped you out a little bit. Just again, try around this stuff, right? Just dabble in it, and you'll get better and better over time. You'll understand what works, what didn't work, just as I did. It'll only get better, but really just don't overlook this. Don't underestimate the power of transitions and swooshes and all that stuff, because it truly does a lot. I hope everybody's doing fine out there. I hope everybody's still staying creative. Just do what you love. It'll work out if you just maintain doing that. Don't get sidetracked by what everybody else is doing. Obviously, that's not to be mistaken with educating yourself, watching tutorials, watching stuff like this right here to just gain inspiration. So that's it for today, and I hope I see you back in the next video, whatever that might be, whenever that might be.